Hello everyone, I welcome you to the workshop, The Global Sustainability Agenda and the Challenges for Education, developed by the Universidad Pontificia Bolivariana, UPB. It is a pleasure for me to be with you in this action reflection space where we'll analyze important challenges for sustainability and education in order to achieve the 2030 Sustainability Agenda. My name is Ana María Osorio Flores. I am an environmental engineer and I hold a graduate degree in environmental law and a master's degree in law with emphasis in mining, hydrocarbon, and energy regulation. I am the national coordinator of the sustainability strategy at UPB, in which we have developed projects that have positioned the university as the first neutral carbon university in Latin America, certified by the Colombian Institute of Technical Standards and Certification, ICONTEC. This accomplishment, among others, has positioned the UPB as a top 10 university that works towards the achievement of the 13 SDG climate action according to the Times Higher Education ranking. We will come back to this topic at the end of the workshop. Within today's agenda, we will have space to learn about the appearance of the concept of sustainability and its historical context. This concept has allowed the United Nations to consolidate the 2030 Sustainability Agenda, which comprises 17 goals, 169 targets, and 230 indicators. We have a lot of work to do with this agenda. Going through these goals, I will learn the general concept of sustainability, and then I will explain the methodology for the workshop, which includes the development of a group challenge that is related to the role of sustainability plays in education. Finally, I will present the success case about the UPB becoming the first neutral carbon university in Latin America. So let's begin. In order to start, it is important to talk about the historical context in which the concept of sustainability originates. Such a concept appeared within DEAR summits in the mid-70s as a bet of countries to improve their relationship with ecosystems, and it represents the new way that we have found as citizens to develop our productive activities within the territories. The first sustainability manifest led us to the first ecologic movement in the 1970s. This movement was motivated by Rachel Carson, a marine biologist and conservationist. Now, as that woman, they initiated the contemporary environmental movement. By the mid-50s, during the post-war period in the United States, pesticides had become part of life in the country, and more than 600 million pounds of such substances were used per year. It was in 1962 that the chemical industry, the government, and the agribusiness were accused of poisoning the environment in Science Print, a book written by Rachel Carson. In it, they envisioned a nightmare for the future of the environment and ecosystems. This book, obviously, of course, polarized the country, and the controversy that emerged from its interpretation changed the way of history. This can be achieved by a great book that can change people's mind and perspective in the long run. In fact, science prints is still affecting our thinking and the public policy making processes nowadays. The main idea of Rachel's message is that we have come to terms with nature and work with it, not against it. In a modern and complex society, that concept was, of course, considered as radical since it was changing people's opinion. But as many other sustainability experts, I think this was revolutionary, and I definitely recommend reading it. Please do not miss the opportunity to take a look at the first environmental manifest. Now, let us see what happened to world leaders and countries after this first warming. You may have heard about the Club of Rome. It is a group of politicians, scientists, economists, financial experts, and writers from several parts of the world, whose common goal was their concern about the future of humanity. This group is trying to figure out how our life on Earth is going to develop and how to ensure a future worth living in. In 1972, Dennis Meadows, who is nowadays as emeritus professor at MIT, was assigned the task of conducting studies about the future of planet Earth with funding from the Volkswagen Foundation. He gathered a team and developed a report called The Limits to Growth, which contains a summary of a complex study whose key question was, what will be the future be like if the world population continues to grow and industrialization, pollution, food production, and exploitation of natural resources continue unabated? This was a novel question in the 1970s after continued growth held between the 1950s and 1960s these years. Meadows' team simulated this apparent limits growth using complex computational models and obtained impressive results, given that exponential growth models under different scenarios led them to conclude that the growth will stop in a period with our near future, between 2022 and 2060, 2 years ago. It is obvious that the wealth of our planet is limited, then the excessive use of hydrocarbons and natural resources, the destruction of forests, and overfishing will result in the extinction of species and the disappearance of ecosystems. Therefore, there are limits to what our planet can endure without great consequence. All environmental movements that were born in 1970s established limits to growth as their basis of reasoning. In an interview held in 2016, Meadows indicated that he had already exceeded the limits since we are between 60 and 70% above sustainable levels of development, and global warming and rising sea levels are proof of this. Now that we are talking about the limits to growth, I want to mention the Earth Overshoot Days of the last 3 years. Earth Overshoot Day marks the days when humanity's demand for ecological resources and services in a given year exceeds what Earth can regenerate in that year. We maintain this deficit, but liquidating stocks of ecological resources and accumulating waste, primarily carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Earth Overshoot Day is hosted and calculated by the Global Footprint Network, an international research organization that provides decision makers with a menu of tools to help the human economy operate within Earth's ecological limits. There is a third milestone which, my point of view, is the most relevant for the definition in the concept of sustainability, and which, not in vain, in the middle of the historical context. The milestone split the history of sustainability into a consolidated concept that has been developed with the Common Global Agendas, the Summit of the Earth, and in general, with decisions that several countries and their organizations have taken to reduce impacts or productive activities over the ecosystem. The Sustainable Development concept, as we know it today, originated in 1987, and when read, its challenges and implications are clearly understood, despite the fact we do not have the tools for decided implementation. This concept was born through the paper Our Common Future, also known as the Brundtland Report, in recognition of former Norwegian Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland's role as chair of the World Commission on Environmental and Development. The report was published in 1987 by the United Nations through the Oxford University Press. Its targets were multilateralism and interdependence of nations in the search for a sustainable development plan. The report sought to recapture the spirit of the Stockholm Conference, The Limits to Growth, which had introduced the environmental concerns to the formal political development sphere. Our Common Future placed environmental issues firmly on the political agenda. It aimed at discussing the environment and development as one single issue. The Commission focused its attention in the areas of population, food security, the loss of species and genetic resources, energy, industry, and human settlements, realizing that all of these areas connected and cannot be treated in isolation from one another. Brundtland defined the first concept of sustainability, which we have used for 33 years in this report. As I mentioned, from that date to the present, roadmaps, strategic metrics, programs, and even public policies have been established so that states can adhere the concept in a decided way. This concept is very important and integrates three fundamental dimensions in no strict order. The first is related to everything that involves development in terms of economic growth and the growth of cities and countries. The first variable or dimension of sustainability frames its action through an economic perspective that invites countries to continue their development. The second dimension is the one that integrates the concept of environmental and natural resources and invites nations to use them rationally in order to guarantee their future availability. Finally, the third and last dimension involves social issues, people, and stated in the concept future generation. The application of the concept of sustainability works as long as we can guarantee that these generations will have the same or better resources than we do, or at least technological, human, and natural capabilities to satisfy their needs. The second Earth Summit was in 1992, and it has been considered one of the most successful ones in terms of advancing towards the consolidation of the global sustainability agenda. This summit was developed using three fundamental premises. First, they use concepts from the 1972 summits to consolidate the basis established in the document The Limits to Growth. Second, the concept of sustainable development established in the Brundtland Report was recognized as a global agreement that will allow us the country's agendas to build around three dimensions mentioned before: the economic one, the social one, and the environmental one. And third, they made a common but differentiated identification of social and environmental problems in developed and developing countries, which were called Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 at that time, on issues such as the loss of biodiversity, climate change, and poverty, aspects directly related to environmental problems. Two very important results were obtained from these summits. Two results. First, the definition of the 21 Agenda signed by 172 countries and which contains more than 2,500 environmental and social recommendations. Second, the approval of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, signed 1992, that was later used to build the Kyoto Protocol, signed 1997, with global commitments to combat greenhouse gas emissions. This protocol is used nowadays to establish the bets on decarbonizing the economy. More recently, in this historical context, we have the Global Sustainability Agenda that was preceded by the Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs, in this part of the slide. Which the Millennium Development Goals, which managed to consolidate a baseline for countries to define their bets for the future in the sustainability matter. The United Nations Millennium Declaration, signed in September 2000, was established to commit world leaders to combat poverty, hunger, disease, environmental degradation, and discrimination against women. The MDGs were derived from this declaration, all with specific targets and indicators. 8 goals, 21 targets, and 60 indicators were defined in 2000 for 2015. To eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, to achieve universal primary education, to promote gender equality and empower women, to reduce child mortality, to improve maternal health, to combat AIDS, malaria, and other diseases, to ensure environmental sustainability, and to develop a global partnership for development. Finally, the Sustainable Development Goals were launched and adopted in September 2015 by all 193 United Nations member states. It was a process that reached conclusion in 3 years after a fairly robust community consultation in which 8 million people debated and framed the problems that matter most in their communities. Although the agenda comprises 17 goals, they raised more than 300 issues during the consultation process in order to transform the plan. This agenda, now as the Zero Agenda, comprises 17 goals, 169 targets, and 230 indicators. No poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reducing inequality, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and partnership to achieve the goal. I want to end my intervention by talking about the challenges, risks, and opportunities that arise when a strong commitment is made by the different productive sectors, public, private, and academic, to fulfill the global sustainability agenda. The challenges are aimed at the implication of the concept of sustainability, since there are hardly any middle points, and the bets require resignation that organizations are not willing to assume. Can you imagine a commitment to meet the 17 goals is impossible it is then necessary to prioritize them and to develop a roadmap for the fulfillment by 2030. Risks appear inside those organizations that are not prepared for changes and which need to include the interdependence as the guiding axis for sustainability within their concepts. This implies understanding that we depend on a planet with limited resources for development of activities. And opportunities are framed in the consolidation of a new culture that transcend economic models and prepare organization in advance to face current and potential challenges which are given by dynamic context and by the needs and expectation of stakeholders, the latter being fundamental for each organization. After this long, detailed explanation about sustainability, the sustainability development goals and the historical context, the time has come to hear your comments about the challenges of sustainability in education. We will do this through 5 guiding questions that will allow us to consolidate the conclusions from this workshop and to get familiar through UPV's success case with the opportunities and strategies from the education system in compliance with the Global Sustainability Agenda. We are going to use a tool named Menti, and the methodology will be as follows. You will go to the website, menti.com, and input this code, 345761 and 3. You will go to the website in your phone, in your computer, menti.com, and input code. You will then have 4 minutes to answer each question. The questions have been created so that you can answer them in a few words. As you answer them, Menti will show us answers in a table, and we will have 1 more minute at the end of each question to conclude. Okay, menti.com. Do you have any questions? This is the code, 345761 and 3. Has everybody gone to the website already? Okay. Let's give a few moments for everyone to be in the app. Okay, let's begin. Question 1. How can we guarantee that the different curricula includes topics or practices which are focused on sustainability? Go ahead. Menti.com, this code, and show the answers. 4 minutes for the answers. Okay, we have 2 answers and 2 minutes. Okay, as we can see, the inclusion of subjects that are associated with environmental topics could be the best tool to include set topics in the curriculum. Currently, students want to know about these topics and are asking to be taught about sustainability and its importance in the different levels of their academic training. Okay. Let's move on to the next question. Question number 2. How can we make campuses and academic spaces, service labs, for learning about sustainability? How can we make campuses and academic spaces serve as lab for learning about sustainability?